Hey everyone, this is Sarah Petty from Sage Advice Wellness, and today we're going to talk about 5 ways you can say no to negative body comments. And that might be a comment from someone else, or it could be a comment that you said to yourself. And as a little bit of personal introduction, people have said all sorts of things to me about my body, both positive and negative. One of the most memorable things that I can remember someone saying to me was she leaned in really close to my face and said, "Wow, I can see the blood vessels right above your eyes are so vivid." And then she leaned back and didn't say anything else. And I thought that was so interesting because I had never really noticed that I had really vivid blood vessels visible above my eyes. And that's not necessarily a negative thing, but I don't think she meant it in a hurtful way. But it started to make me feel really self-conscious about my skin translucency and whether or not I should get a spray tan and if there was something wrong with me. And this is just a great example of how your seemingly innocuous comments about someone else's body, or seemingly positive comment or encouraging, helpful comment about your own body, can actually trigger some negative thoughts. I'm not saying that we shouldn't ever have negative thoughts, but in most cases, these types of thoughts aren't helpful and they can trigger some negative behaviors. So and just as another thing to talk about before I get into the 5 ways you can say no to these comments, just because you think you look a certain way, and that gives people the right to comment on your body. So for example, if you have disfigurement, or if you have a larger body than most people, you probably have gotten more comments on your body. And just because you look a certain way doesn't mean that you deserve to hear those types of comments. And you should know that people that are seemingly in a perfect body still also receive negative body comments all the time. A great example would be celebrities. There's a celebrity that I know of that has their own nutritionist, they have a personal trainer, they have a Pilates instructor, a boxing coach, and 2 chefs working for them. So seemingly they have all the easy ways to make their body look good, and they have a very healthy approach to eating well and exercise. So they're very mentally healthy as well. And they have an appearance that looks really, really fit, and yet they still get negative body comments all the time on their social media that I see because I follow them. And so it's interesting. We can't escape. It's just part of our culture. So what can you do about it? I would definitely want to avoid commenting on someone else's body, making them feel like their body isn't good enough, whatever that means, because this causes shame. And shame usually causes some sort of rebellious behavior because we react in a way that makes us feel like we need to compensate for that feeling. And so sometimes people that feel shame will go do a behavior like eating a box of cookies, and that is usually the opposite effect of what the person commenting is wanting for them. So just be aware that your comments might be promoting something negative in another person as well. It's really, really important to speak up for yourself. It's also really, really hard to do. And I'm the first person to say it's really hard to do. I don't always successfully speak up for myself because I don't like confrontation. And so for me, confrontation has a cost-benefit analysis every single time. Is the cost of the awkwardness of this confrontation worth the benefit of me receiving any kind of feedback from that confrontation? And so usually if there's a body comment from someone else on my body, I find that it's not worth it to me to approach it with that person. Now, of course, if this was someone who was continuously commenting, I might find that the cost benefit would be that would be worth it. But usually I don't. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't, and that doesn't mean that you can't, and it doesn't mean that I can't. It's a skill just like any other skill. And so hopefully these comments will help you. These guidelines will help you do it if you want to work on it for yourself. So what do you say when people, maybe you, maybe someone else, can't keep their thoughts to themselves about their body? One thing is you can say, you know what, you're right. If they are, you're right. And there's so much more to me than my body. And I'm working on this other new skill right now. It's really challenging me. So let's talk about that. So you could say, if someone says, wow, you've really gained a lot of weight in the last 6 months, you could say, you know what, I have. but that's not important to me right now. I'm actually working on this skill. I'm working on push-ups, and it's really challenging me. I'm kind of enjoying it. So can you do a push-up? And you can kind of change the subject a little bit while also letting them know that you don't really care, or that you find that it's not as important as they think it is. That's probably the most non-confrontational comment that I have on my list, because I tend to get pretty snarky in writing. So when I'm writing out these comments, I find that I'm a little more confrontational than I might be in person. So if this works for you, awesome. If it doesn't, you might write them a note or choose a different option. So that first option is pretty good for most people. Another thing you could say in response is, I don't really care what you think about my body. And that works great if it's a stranger, especially, or someone who has continuously harassed you or continuously made negative comments. You'd be like, you know what? I don't really care, and just move on with your day and try to get away from them, I guess. Most people will kind of be surprised by your statement, and they may take a step back after that. You're establishing some sort of boundary there. Another thing you can do to say, another thing you can say to someone who has said something to you is, that's interesting. I suppose you think that I should focus on that. Well, right now I'm focusing on something else. So you can acknowledge that what they're saying and say, you know, I'm considering what you're saying. That's a really polite thing to do, especially if you don't know the person that well. Or if you do and you just want to, you know, not be super confrontational with them, you can say, that's really interesting. I'll consider that. But actually, right now I'm focusing on building my skills of intuitive eating, or I'm focusing on my relationship with food. I'm focusing on my relationship with my body. And so I'm choosing not to acknowledge negative comments like that because it's not helping me right now. So something like that you could say. Another option is, this is a little more direct and puts it back on the commenter. Why is that important to you? So if someone says to you, you know, wow, you're really short, or man, you are super skinny. You could be like, why is that important to you? Like, why do you feel the need to say that? And that can bring to light the idea that the comment wasn't really welcomed and isn't really relevant without directly saying it. So it kind of puts the question and puts the attention back on the person who said something to you, and that can really help them, if they're at all socially aware, it can help them put some attention on themselves and maybe help them consider that maybe that wasn't the right thing to say. So if you're talking with someone who is a little more socially aware, or maybe someone that you know well, that might be a good option for you. And the last thing you could try is a little more negative, a little more direct. You could say, when I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. And this is especially great, again, for people that are just saying something to you offhand and you don't really know them as you're passing by. If you want to be a little more polite than you could be to someone who's saying something negative to you, you could just say, when I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. And it does sound harsh, but it's not really, considering that they felt that they had the right to comment on your body, which is not any of their business. Ultimately, your body is your own business and their body is theirs, and we can all love each other and work together and help each other without making negative comments. It's completely uncalled for. So it's totally fine to say, I don't really care what you think, or when I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. Now, if that sounds really harsh to you, and if you feel like that's just really too confrontational for you, that's okay. If you want to be able to say that, I would recommend practicing it in the mirror. That's something that I do sometimes when I feel like I need to work on this skill. You can also opt to send it in writing if it's someone that you know and you feel like you communicate better with a letter. I know that's a little funky, but it might work well for you. Or you could also send them a text and be like, you know what, remember that thing you said? I really feel like it hurt my feelings and here's why. Or you could just say one of those 5 things. And if you feel like this was helpful to you, but you want to see it more written out, I am going to be publishing a blog later today with all of this fleshed out in writing for you, so you can just cut and paste into your phone or practice saying it in the mirror out loud. If you guys have any other comments that you think would be helpful for this conversation, please feel free to add it in the comment box below. And hopefully you can use some of these later on if someone says something to you. Thanks. Bye.